Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed.
Welcome, everybody, back here on the ballot. I'm Norm Leahy, your host, senior editor at Ballotpedia. One of the things that Ballotpedia does, spends a lot of time on, is talking about local elections, particularly the elections in America's largest cities. And one of America's most storied big cities recently had an election. That's Detroit, Michigan. And joining us today to talk about the results of that mayoral race and some other things that may have come up is Michael Elrick, a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and general good guy for the Detroit Free Press. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the ballot.
It's great to be with you.
Now, like I said, Detroit had a mayoral primary. It was a nonpartisan primary for mayor on August 5th. And you have, right before air, you said that you stayed up late writing your column on this. And give us a quick overview of the results if you could.
Sure. So we had 9 candidates whose names appeared on the ballot. Really, there were probably 6 legitimate candidates, people who know what they're doing, ran a professional campaign. And of those, we figured maybe 3, possibly 4 had a shot to make it to the finals, because in Michigan, these are nonpartisan municipal elections. Top 2 finishers advance to the general election. And polling, which we don't really trust around here, showed that the front runner was going to finish somewhere in the 30s, maybe 35, 36%. But there's a large undecided block. Turnout here is typically terrible in a primary, maybe 14, 15%. So my thinking was those undecideds were never going to convert to votes. They were just going to sit home. And so on the primary night, I expected Mary Sheffield, our city council president, to be the first past the post with 30-something%. In fact, she got 51%. And so the anybody but Mary vote, which we thought was significant, at most is 48 or 49%. No one saw this coming.
Why would there be an anyone but Mary vote? What's the deal with her?
I think it's a great Fairley Brothers movie, isn't it? Something about Mary. Everybody loves that movie.
Yeah.
Just watch out for the hair products. There's 6 candidates. Some of them are going to attract voters because of their own qualities. But Mary Sheffield has been on city council for 12 years. Her father is a fairly polarizing figure, and she spent over $1 million. Her advertisements are everywhere. And sometimes there's just kind of a, we don't want to anoint somebody. We want somebody to earn this. She's also very young. And I hate to say this, but sometimes female candidates are given a harder time by voters. They may be more skeptical. And it just seemed like with that many candidates, people would be looking for an alternative to someone perceived as the shoo-in. And it turns out they weren't.
Well, and then who is the alternative going into the general election in November?
Sure. So I did some very unscientific random sampling at one polling place on my side of town, but they told me what we've been hearing from people throughout the year. No one is excited about these candidates. None of these candidates has captured the imagination of Detroiters. Other than that, when you look at the field, outstanding field. You have a sitting city council president. You have a former city council president who served as CEO of a nonprofit that helps people pay their utility bills. You have a former police chief who performed very well in the job. You have a sitting city councilman who represents a part of town that really feels like it's underrepresented. You have a prominent attorney, and you have a pastor who leads one of the largest and fastest growing churches in America, who 30 years ago took over a flock of about 3 dozen and now claims to have 40,000 parishioners. These are some highly skilled, highly talented candidates who should be able to build quite a following. But maybe people just like Mary more than we thought. I don't know. But nobody really caught fire other than our city council president, who's now the de facto mayor, I think.
You think? So even though we've been around politics long enough to know that even a single day in politics is a lifetime. So even with the time between now and the November general, you think this race is fairly much decided?
Yeah, I mean, First of all, if it had been close, if Sheffield had finished in second place or it had been a neck and neck for the first spot in the primary, that would have slowed up her fundraising and it would have opened the floodgates for whoever the challenger is. The challenger did not raise a ton of money, which means there's a lot of potential donors out there waiting to be activated. At this point, I don't think anybody's even hedging their bets. I think whatever money he raised is going to be tough to raise a similar amount. And you've now got a candidate with a massive head start. The second place finisher, by the way, had 17%. So you have a front runner with a 34% lead. I think people are going to double down. There's a lot of dark money in this campaign. I think that's going to continue. And there's a PAC that's been very active, but individual donors who maxed out can now write checks to that PAC or to the dark money campaign. I think a lot of people are going to just try and reaffirm their position with the front runner, and a lot of people are going to try and jump on that bandwagon, and they're going to use cash as the pole vault to get on that bandwagon because it is rolling.
And what were the big issues in the primary? What was everybody talking about? What galvanized voters? What got them to show up?
That's a great question. Detroit has been doing very well over the last decade. It is one of the great comeback stories in America. But most of the candidates have been saying, I'm going to keep doing what the last mayor did. Now, I think we know most elections pivot on change.
Mhm.
But when you have a candidate and multiple candidates running as status quo candidates, that just doesn't get anybody excited. The one narrative you'll hear is while Detroit has been coming back, what we want to do is spread that resurgence into the neighborhoods. And there is a feeling that there are people who have been left out. Now, Mary Sheffield, who's cast herself as a progressive trying to appeal to people who feel left out, now is saying there's only one Detroit, and we just need to make sure that one Detroit spreads a little further. So you have kind of the rabble rouser who has now become the establishment candidate, and we're going to see more and more of that. The Reverend Solomon Kinloch, by the way, finished in second. He has been the one candidate saying, they've forgotten about you folks. City Hall has left you behind. All these people in City Hall who say they'll help you, they've had a chance to help you in City Hall, and they haven't done it. So it's time to let me take a shot at it. And we'll see if that message resonates. So far, it hasn't. But when it comes down to two, that's the other thing with these races. When you have 9 candidates or even just really 6, they don't line each other up. You can't attack multiple candidates at once and be successful. Now
Hmm.
that it's one-on-one, maybe they really start to run those contrast ads that we've all seen, and we start to see some fault lines emerge. But to run ads, you need to have money. And when somebody's got 51% and they've been in City Hall for 12 years, and the business and the donor class feel like they know them and can trust them, I don't know where that money comes from.
And as we know, sometimes what happens in big city elections can have ripple effects in other parts of the body politic, at the state level, in particular. Do you think anything comes out of this primary, and this is maybe a big ask, that influences what may show up, say, even in the midterms next year? Messages, tactics, approaches, anything that you think might carry over?
Well, most of the candidates have been talking about we expect there to be a revenue problem in Detroit. And while Mayor Mike Duggan is a very effective manager and has been a very successful mayor, he was also riding on hundreds of millions of dollars from ARPA, from COVID. He was Joe Biden's favorite mayor, so there's a lot of money coming from Washington. We know that's going to stop.
Hmm.
And if we start to see the impact of that between now and, say, November 2026, what's going to happen is you will see those candidates saying, this is why you need to keep our Democrats in the Senate because Detroit is suffering, Michigan's suffering because the money's been cut off from Washington. The other thing that we don't know yet, but may come to bear fruit, is that Mayor Sheffield's very young. She was one of the youngest people ever elected to Detroit City Council. I believe she's 36 today. Does she somehow activate young voters? And does that play to the benefit of Democrats? Because she's very much a Democrat. But I think every candidate I've ever seen waits for the young voters to arrive and to make their presence felt. And
Right.
All that happens is the young voters get older and we keep waiting for them.
Yeah, they get older and they get and that's when they become reliable, and that's when they become donors, et cetera, et cetera. But so, you mentioned the previous incumbent, the outgoing incumbent, Mayor Duggan, who has ambitions. Can you tell us about those?
Sure. So Mike Duggan, after 3 terms as mayor, and again, Detroit is a nonpartisan municipal election system. He's a Democrat, very tight with Joe Biden. He's running for mayor, a governor of Michigan as an independent.
Hmm.
Now, if he comes out and endorses Mary Sheffield, he's been very careful not to endorse anybody because, of course, with that many candidates, you probably make more enemies than you make friends, and you need every
Sure.
friend you can get when the big block of votes is going to come out of Detroit. It's a Democratic city, and you're no longer a Democrat, and Democrats are attacking you as a turncoat and saying you're taking Trump money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If he endorses Mary Sheffield and can somehow get her to get behind his campaign and propel him forward, that could have a significant bearing on Michigan politics in 2026. But at the same time, that endorsement is not going to carry the same weight. When you've got 51% and somebody says, I'm with you, that doesn't feel like you're going out on a limb. And it doesn't feel like I owe you very much when I become mayor. And in fact, I think Mary Sheffield will feel, you're not my daddy. I don't need your approval. I got here by myself. And so when you come to me looking for help, I might feel like, you know what? Where were you when I needed you? I'm good now. Best of luck in all future endeavors. So it remains to be seen. And she's going to have her hands full. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I do think there will be some spillover into other races, both federally and statewide. But mayor of Detroit, you tend to take care of Detroit. And unless they're going to try and get some mojo going between the mayor and the governor, it's hard to imagine.
Well, can I take you down the speculative highway just a little bit further? With the midterms coming up, they're going to be very important, and we all know this. And there's going to be a lot of attention placed on states like Michigan because of the key role that it plays on the national stage. Can you give us just a quick overview of what the midterms might look like there, the congressional races?
So we have a congressman who's considered the front runner for governor named John James, who's in a very toss-up district. Democrats almost won it the last 2 times. They'd love to grab it next time, unless, of course, we redistrict like Texas and everybody else seems to be doing.
Is that a possibility?
No, because I think we are constitutionally tied to the census where we do it every 10 years. And Michigan has a nonpartisan citizen redistricting commission that I think will have to be reconstituted if we try and do that. So that just won't happen
Mm.
in time. But he is expected to be the Republican nominee. Um, and so that's going to open a congressional seat. But in the Senate race, that's a really big deal because we have a wide open Republican Senate a race. Uh, Mike Rogers, who lost to Alyssa Slotkin in the second closest race in the country by maybe 10,000 votes or so. Uh, will he get the nomination? We'll see. But on the Democratic side, you have some very well funded, sophisticated candidates competing vigorously for that. You have one candidate who's backed by Schumer, one candidate who's backed by a candidate who I think wants to be the Senate Democratic leader. And then you have Abdul El Sayed, who's Palestinian, or at least he's Muslim, who is going to get a lot of support from a lot of the people who abandoned Biden and Kamala Harris in 2024 because they were unhappy with what was going on. And when I say unhappy, that is seriously understating the case,
Yeah.
what was going on in Israel and Gaza. So that is another primary where I could see the winner getting 30 something percent of the vote. But you know what? I said that about Mary Sheffield. So don't bet your paycheck on what old ML Elrick has to say, because you're probably not going to be wearing pants. And I don't want to see you pantsless and mad at me.
Well, nobody needs to see that for me, so don't no worries on my end. But so there's a lot of wheels moving here, and it's always exciting. This is why you know junkies like us pay attention to politics because once it starts moving, it's the greatest game in town. Michael, I know you're extraordinarily busy and you need some rest, so I'm going to let you go. But Michael Elrick, Detroit Free Press, I want to thank you for joining us today on the ballot. We really appreciate it.
Sure, thanks. And if people want to stay up on this, go to freep.com. You can follow our coverage. We're already deep into the 2026 elections, and the 2025s aren't over. So there's plenty of content there for you. And if you're a junkie, we're your dope man.
Yeah. Excellent. Michael Elrick, Detroit Free Press. Thanks again. And because politics never sleeps and there is no rest for the wicked, we'll be back with another episode of On the Ballot soon. Until then, we'll see you on the digital pages of Ballotpedia. I'm Norm Leahy. Take care.